Good morning. I'm doing this about an hour earlier than what I was really expecting to, but there's not going to be an 8 o'clock update. So, what you see here, let me switch screens here. What you see there is the latest information that came out at 5 a.m. Still 85 mile per hour. Pressure did go up a little bit, and it's still going northwest at 13. So there are some other changes that I want to talk about. The timing on this thing is slowed down by 6 or 8 hours on the models. So it's going to be hitting Florida a little bit later. And I know I don't have that many people on here, but I want to go ahead and get this information out. Here's the latest forecast cone. I'll blow it up here for you. Still going to be a major hurricane, but now they're talking about 125 mile per hour winds when it gets up there to Florida. Last night it was 115. Now they're saying 125. And this symbol right here, this is for 2 a.m. on Sunday. It'll be approaching Florida around that time. So it looks like it's going to be landfall overnight. Not liking that. I don't know, Nathan, are you watching? You might want to change your plans. And hurricane hunters, they're on their way. You can see here, got one that pulled out of, looks like Tampa. Looks like there might be another one up there at Tampa that will be taken off as well. And they're headed down there. We're going to try to get some more information. Now, the reason why they did away with the 8 o'clock advisory update is because this thing's not affecting landfall anywhere. So there's no watches and warnings out. Once it starts getting closer to some land and they start putting watches or warnings out, I'll start getting updates every 3 hours again. So the next update will be 11 a.m. I will probably go ahead and do a broadcast at that time. I'll be awake, I think. Let's go ahead and take a look at the infrared satellite. It's not looking quite as good, but it's still really strong. It's still really strong, and it's trying to, intensify again, like it did yesterday. Now, if you notice, and I'll pause it here and blow it up, you have this empty open slot right there. That's where it's sucking in dry air. And that's one thing that's kind of held it back. Now the center is going to be, let me do this in blue. Center is going to be somewhere right around in there. And what you'll see with this storm, you can almost see like a hook, like you would with a tornado. And what that's doing, that's a little swirl that's spinning around that particular cluster. And you could see it there kind of spinning around there. That's a sign that it's trying to intensify. Also over here on the right side or the eastern side, it's trying to build up some stronger storms right there. So it's still expected to keep on growing. There's still nothing holding it back. Now, some new information, and it's pretty much what I was talking about last night, is how is this thing's going to be steered. Let me go to water vapor mode. And it still has this upper low that's just on the northwest side of it. That's supposed to slide down towards Cuba. So, according to the models, this low is going to head down that way. And it'll kind of open up a path for this thing to go right up towards Florida. Now, that low could shift. If it shifts up closer to Florida, that'll change the steering. So, if I put this in motion again, we're going to have that low right there, but we expect it to come down here towards Cuba. And the other thing that's going to help steer this is, like I was saying on my last couple of broadcasts, there's going to be this high that's going to form up in here. We're going to end up with a ridge this weekend, and it'll produce this high. And depending on how strong this high is going to depend on how it steers. I'll go ahead and pause this here. So, if this high is really strong, it's going to be wrapping around winds, and the winds will be going that direction. So that's going to try to push it more towards southern Florida. Now, if it's weaker high pressure, it will allow the storm to track more towards the north. So strong high, we'll put it here. A weak high, we'll put it up here. But I tell you something that's really interesting this morning. Let's look at the models. These things off here. Let's take a look at the models. You remember how I've been telling y'all, if you've been watching, that I depend on the euro, but as this thing gets closer, the GFS starts kind of saying the same thing. So here's the GFS. And down here in the bottom right hand corner, that's Dorian. And I'll go frame by frame. And you can see where the GFS has it going towards northern Florida. And there's also going to be a trough this weekend that's going to form. It's going to form up here in the Midwest and push down. And that trough can also effectively help steer this a little bit. And the GFS is kind of showing that. You can kind of see how it's staying over land and wringing itself out. Then it starts headed out to sea. Now let's take a look at the euro. Down there in the bottom right hand corner is Dorian. Now this is where the euro kind of changed overnight. If you were watching me last night, the euro had it going out in the Gulf and then turning up into Alabama. Well, that's changed. Look what the euro's doing now. It's coming onshore and right straight up the center of Florida, and then hugging the coast and then going out to sea. So the GFS is starting to come around. It's still got it a little bit further north. During the night, the GFS had it going way in northern Florida. And now it's got it. I'll go back to the GFS here. It has it coming in further south. So there's not a big difference between those two models. I'll back to Euro. Okay, there's where Euro center comes on shore. There's where the GFS has got it. Not that far apart. So the GFS is starting to come around to what the Euro says. And that's typically what happens. So the models are no longer showing it going into the Gulf. It's going to come on shore. It's really going to slow down, turn north, and rain itself out. Now, in this forecast cone, something that I didn't mention last night, this forecast cone is where they're projecting the center of the storm could go. Remember, now this thing's pretty small and compact right now. I think its widest point is only like 90 miles from the center of it. But if it gets really big, the center could come in right around there. Morning, Southpaw. And you imagine, let's say this thing gets 100 miles from the center. So if that center comes on shore there, the wind fields, hey, thanks for the follow, man. The wind fields be stretching out 100 miles from center in any direction. That's just if it is 200 miles wide, 100 miles from center to the edge. Now where the center of this cone is coming on shore, there you can see it, Port St. Lucie, close to there, between Melbourne and Port St. Lucie. That's where the center of the cone, you know, it could go anywhere in this cone, but that's the projected point for the center of it. So even if it makes landfall, let's say in Melbourne, you're going to have, you know, still the most part, pretty much all of Florida that's going to be affected, depending on how big it is. So where this H is here, that's 2 a.m. Monday morning, as of right now. At that point, it's showing the winds are dropping down to 85. Out here, it's 125. So that's how much that thing's really going to weaken when it comes on shore. And remember, this is all going to change slightly as we go along. I mean, even this cone is shifted further south than what it was last night. Now, I do believe the 11 a.m. Eastern Time, there will be a cone update as well as everything else. Hurricane hunters, like I said, they're already headed down there. They're going to check this thing out, put the data in the models, and hopefully the 11 a.m. will reflect the data and the information that they found. I'm still showing a plane up here at Tampa. It hasn't taken off yet. So anybody got any questions? I'm sorry I did this an hour earlier, but I knew we wasn't going to have an 8 a.m. update. So I wanted to go ahead and get this done so I could get some rest. I've been up all night. I couldn't get to sleep. Every time I lay down and close my eyes, it's like, oh crap, I want to look at the models. I want to see what changed. or I want to look at the cone, or I want to look at the radar. Speaking of which, the live radar here is out of Puerto Rico. There's only one radar site. Morning, Stacy. And it doesn't look all that great on radar. That's because it's over 130 miles away from the radar site. Radar site is down here in the southern part, and it's on the south side of the mountains. So it's really amazing that it's seeing it as well as it is. You can still see the eye. It's just not well formed right now. And let's go back. Let's see if I can get visible. Not quite yet. Almost. Really hard to see. But look how these overshooting tops on these thunderstorms. This is really cool. I love to watch the visible satellite. Now this is that little swirly that I was talking about when I put it in motion on infrared. That's one thunderstorm. You got this one. You got this one. And a bunch of smaller ones all around. But what I don't like to see is this dry slot. That's pulling in dry air right now. Eventually, it won't have to worry about it. By 11 o'clock, the sun will be up a lot better for it, and I'll be able to show you the visible satellite a lot better. There you go. That's my latest information. Again, if you're just joining in, the European model no longer has it going out into the Gulf, and the GFS is starting to get that same look as the Euro. It's still a little bit further north on its landfall than the Euro, but it's getting closer to saying the same thing. The bad news is this thing slow down. In the model forecast, it slowed down to about 6 to 8 hours from what we figured last night was going to be landfall. So Nathan, if you're watching, might end up changing your mind because it may be early Tuesday morning. We just got to keep an eye on it. I'm hoping this thing speeds up when it gets better organized later today, and it will. There's nothing to slow it down. So it's going to get stronger, and when it does, I'm hoping the forward speed will start to pick up a little bit. If it does that, it's going to be hitting Florida early. Now, if there's anybody from Florida watching right now, please start your emergency plans today, like now. Don't wait till this weekend. Already I've seen video of stores being crowded. People are already, especially in like Orlando, was one video I seen, and the stores are already getting crowded. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It could slow down to 5 miles per hour and the wind still be 125. The forward speed, when they estimate the strength of the winds, that has nothing to do with the forward speed. But as I said last night, the upper right quadrant is usually, what creates a lot more damage than the rest of the storm. But a lot of that is you have to not only take the wind speed, but also add it to the forward motion speed. And that's what makes it seem like it's got stronger winds in that quadrant. But still, I've seen in that quadrant, I've seen more quick spin up tornadoes than any other part of the storm. That's just the way it is. So, okay, folks, that's all I have for this early morning. Anybody got any questions? Morning, Rippy. Kiara. Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and get this broadcast out of the way so I could get some rest. This one was fairly important, and the main reason is the models, the updated models that I wanted to get out there. Again, the pressure went up just a little bit, and that's really the only information that changed. Still 85 mile per hour, northwest at 13, but the pressure did go up to 991. Yeah, I can recap for you real quick. I've still got everything loaded. Again, we got a Hurricane Hunter that's headed down that way. There'll be another one taking off. And a little bit later, I would imagine there will be a third one. They'll do a high altitude, a low altitude flyby, and maybe even a third one to check out some other areas around it. They're going to be checking for not only the strength of the storm, where the center's at, as well as the dry air all around it. So there'll be all kinds of information. Now, this is a DFS model there, Rippy. And you could see the GFS has it landing a little bit further north than what the Euro does. But both of them has it going right up Florida. I'll go ahead and move this ahead, and you can see how it goes on up into Georgia. Now here's the Euro. It's a little bit further south, but now the Euro, last night the Euro had it going off into the Gulf. Not anymore. It shoots right up the spine of Florida. So the two models are starting to come together, starting to look a lot better. And this is the latest forecast cone. It's still, I have no idea if Steven's going or not. I don't think so. But last night they had this thing as it approached Florida was going to be 115 mile per hour winds. Now they're saying 125 mile per hour winds. But on this last point right there, it's going to drop down to 85 mile per hour winds, which, like I always say, tropical storms needs fuel. They need that warm waters. Once it gets over land, it chokes them and they start falling apart. So that's pretty much the latest info. The only thing that changed overnight was that the pressure did go up. It was 986, I think, last night. It's 991 now. It's going to go back down again. It's pulsating. Yeah, I could imagine. I can imagine they would for Sunday and Monday start closing the parks down. That was a post over on my YouTube chat. That's the latest infrared. You can't really see a well-defined eye, but on this one thunderstorm core, you could see a swirly spinning around. That's a sign that it's trying to intensify, and it did that quick in intensification there yesterday. I mean, it went from 50 mile per hour winds up to 85. Okay, yeah, let me know if they start shutting the parks down. I would imagine they would. I know the governor has already declared a state of emergency for Florida. And they just had the governor of Georgia on. I didn't get to catch his statements, but I know they're warning people as well. And like I said last night, anybody in Florida, near the coastal areas of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, everybody in that whole several states there needs to be aware and be ready for this, because it could still go outside that cone. I don't think anybody's going out tomorrow morning, Jared. I know Jen's going to be heading down there. Michael Koch, I think he said he's going to wait till Friday and go down. I'm not sure. Nathan didn't really say, but he's probably going to fly down there. I would imagine either Friday or Saturday if he's going to go down. I don't know. The timing of this thing is put it later on Monday to early Tuesday morning, and I know he has to be back to work on Monday, so he may change his mind. But we still have several days. Once it starts getting closer to Florida, then the timing will be easier to figure out and more accurate. There's too many uncertainties as far as how strong this thing will be, how well it'll be formed when it gets up there, its speed, its timing, when it makes landfall. There's too many uncertainties right now because it's so far away. So there you go, folks. There's the latest information that I can give you. Again, they did away with the 8 a.m. for now because it's not affecting land. Once they start issuing watches and warnings, I'll start getting those every 3-hour updates. So the next official update will be 11 Eastern time this morning. And I'm going to try to broadcast that. It may be kind of short because that's right around the time when I get my meals. Or I may wait till about 11:30 till after they bring my meal. So there you go, folks. Thank you for joining me. Hope I didn't wake you up. And there we go. Hope I didn't wake you up, but I want to go ahead and get this out there so everybody knows. So y'all have a good morning. We'll catch you here in a few hours.